Hi, I'm Sophia. On the surface, my life might seem perfect. I'm a certified accountant with a thriving career. I live in a beautiful suburban home, and I have a husband, Mark, who looks at me like I hung the moon. We met 3 years ago at a charity golf event. He was terrible at golf, but incredible at making me laugh. After a whirlwind romance and a picture-perfect wedding, I was sure I found my happily ever after. But life has a way of revealing cracks beneath even the most polished veneers. Before I dive into the story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me introduce you to the key players in my life. First, there's my husband, Mark, a successful architect and the definition of a devoted son and husband. His parents, Tom and Linda, welcome me with open arms. Tom built the family construction business from the ground up, while Linda runs their charitable foundation. Then there's Sarah, Mark's younger sister. On paper, she's the marketing director for the family business, but her true full-time job. That's where the story begins. You know those family portraits where everyone's smiling, but something feels off? That's been my life since I married Mark. At first, I admired Sarah's close bond with her brother. She had this way of being everywhere, hovering a little too close, inserting herself into every conversation. It felt sweet, at first. Naive, right? I'd heard whispers about Mark's ex-girlfriend, Julia, a bright dental student who mysteriously ended things with him years ago. According to the family, Julia became paranoid and unstable after spending time with Sarah. I didn't think much of it then. The first red flag appeared during our engagement. Sarah had a knack for creating misunderstandings. Like the time she told Mark I canceled our anniversary dinner to work late, while telling me Mark had an emergency client meeting. We both spent the evening alone, confused and hurt, only to realize the next day that neither of us had canceled. Then came the wedding planning. Family heirlooms meant for me mysteriously disappeared, only to resurface later, after Sarah suggested better alternatives. My wedding dress order was canceled twice, with Sarah swooping in to offer her friend's boutique as a last-minute savior. Even our honeymoon plans weren't safe. Our original reservations vanished, but Sarah conveniently had a solution: a resort close to home, conveniently next door to where she booked her own vacation. Mark couldn't see it then, but I began to piece together the pattern. Sarah couldn't stand not being the center of her brother's world. Things took a darker turn when I stumbled across discrepancies in the family business accounts. As the company accountant, I couldn't ignore the missing funds. When I brought it up to Tom and Linda, they were devastated to discover their daughter had been embezzling. They cut off her access to company finances, leaving her drowning in gambling debts. That's when the accidents began. My car's brakes failed twice in 1 month. Meals I'd ordered arrived with ingredients I was allergic to. And Sarah? She was always there, playing the concerned sister-in-law with a sweet smile that never quite reached her eyes. The real shift happened after Mark and I announced we were trying for a baby. Sarah's reaction was bizarre. She went pale, excused herself, then returned with over-the-top enthusiasm. Not long after, my prenatal vitamins disappeared from my purse. Doctor's appointments were mysteriously canceled. And of course, Sarah was always ready with a solution, positioning herself as my guardian angel. It wasn't just about me anymore, though. I started paying closer attention to our weekly family dinners at Tom and Linda's Victorian home. Sunday nights were a tradition, complete with Linda's prize antique tea set, a silver-plated heirloom with delicate rose engravings. Sarah had appointed herself as the keeper of the tradition, claiming, "Mom's hands are too shaky now." Oddly, Linda's hands were perfectly steady when arranging her prize-winning floral displays. Every Sunday, Sarah arrived early to polish the tea set and arrange the 6 matching cups. Mine was always the one with a tiny chip on the bottom. Charming, she'd say. My headaches always seemed to follow those dinners, and on the rare Sundays I skipped tea, Sarah's disappointment was palpable. I started documenting everything, photographing the tea set, tracking my symptoms, collecting evidence. My accounting skills came in handy. The patterns were undeniable. The accidents escalated. My computer crashed days before a critical audit presentation, wiping months of work. Sarah, ever helpful, just happened to know an IT specialist. But I already had proof. Earlier that week, I found Sarah's browser history on the office computer. Searches like how to corrupt Excel files remotely. When I tried showing Mark, the history had been mysteriously cleared. I knew I had to be smarter. So the next Sunday, I set up my phone to record video. I propped it on the kitchen shelf, angled perfectly toward the formal dining room's tea cart. I'd spent weeks studying Sarah's movements, her little rituals with the antique tea set. Tonight, everything had to be perfect. While helping Linda with the roast, I kept my phone screen in view through a reflection. Sarah was in her usual spot by the tea set, her movements precise, practiced. Then it happened. She glanced over her shoulder, reached into her pocket, and leaned over my cup. A small vial appeared in her hand, just for a moment, before disappearing back into her cardigan. My hands shook as I steadied myself against the counter. After months of suspicion, I finally had proof. But confronting her now would be reckless. I needed everyone to see the truth for themselves. At dinner, Sarah's eyes flicked nervously toward my untouched teacup. Her fingers tapped the table, betraying her tension. "Your tea's getting cold, Sophia," she said, her usual sweet smile strained. "Actually," I replied, standing, "why don't we switch seats, Sarah? I can hardly hear Tom's story about the new project from over here." I picked up my teacup as I moved toward her chair. The color drained from her face. "Oh, but you always sit there. It's tradition," she stammered. I smiled, already settling into her seat. Maybe it's time for a change, unless there's a reason we shouldn't switch. The room grew still. Sarah's gaze darted to my cup. The next few moments unfolded in slow motion. Sarah lunged for the teacup just as Linda reached for it. "I'll just take a sip of yours," then Linda said cheerfully, lifting Sarah's designated cup, the one meant for me, to her lips. "No." Sarah's voice was sharp, panicked. She slapped the cup from Linda's hand. It hit the floor, shattering into fragments, dark liquid seeping into the Persian rug. The room froze. All eyes were on Sarah. "Why?" Linda whispered, her voice trembling. "Sarah, what did you put in the tea?" Sarah's carefully constructed mask crumbled. Her face twisted with desperation. "You don't understand. None of you do. Everything was perfect before she came along. We were perfect." She turned to Mark, her eyes wild. "Remember how it used to be? Just us? She's ruined everything. The baby would have ruined everything." Mark's chair scraped against the floor as he stood. "The baby?" he asked, his voice cracking. He looked at me, his confusion turning to realization. "Sophia, are you?" I nodded, placing a hand protectively on my stomach. "I was going to tell you this week." Sarah let out a bitter laugh. "See, she didn't even tell you first. I'm your sister, Mark. I've always been here, protecting you from women like her, like Julia. They all want to take you away from me." Mark's voice turned dangerously quiet. "Protected me? You mean like you protected me from Julia?" He stepped closer. "Did you do the same things to her?" Sarah didn't answer, but the truth was written all over her face. Her designer purse spilled open as she stood, scattering overdue bills and debt notices across the floor. Linda bent to pick them up, her hands shaking as she read the numbers aloud. 50,000 in gambling debts, another 30 in credit cards. Tom's voice cracked. "Sarah, what have you done?" "I had to." Sarah's composure shattered. Her voice rose to a shriek. "Do you know what it's like watching her take everything? My position in the company, my share of the inheritance, my brother, everything I was supposed to have." "Supposed to have?" Mark's voice was sharp now. "You've been stealing from the company and trying to frame Sophia." Sarah's laugh was hollow, unhinged. It would have worked too. One more month, and the audit would trace everything back to her computer. She'd have lost her license, her reputation, everything. You would have seen her for the gold-digging fraud she is. Gold digger. Linda's voice sliced through the air. "Sophia is the one who saved the business from bankruptcy last year. She doubled our profits with her new system." "Exactly." Sarah spat. "She made herself indispensable. The perfect wife, the perfect daughter-in-law, now the perfect baby to secure her claim to everything." The room fell silent as a small vial rolled out of Sarah's purse, its label visible to everyone. A powerful sedative. Tom picked it up, his hands trembling. This would have made any accident look natural. Mark's face hardened. "You could have killed her. My wife, my child." Sarah's face twisted with rage. "It's not fair. Do you know how it feels to watch her parade around in designer clothes, driving the car you bought her?" "I bought my own car," I said firmly. I built my accounting practice with my own money, long before I even met Mark, I said firmly, cutting through Sarah's lies. Her face twisted in rage. Lies. Everything about you is a lie. Sarah lunged for her purse, but Tom caught her arm. A small notebook tumbled to the floor. Linda picked it up with trembling hands. Inside were meticulous notes, dosages, timing, symptoms, each entry carefully designed to mimic pregnancy complications, to make my suffering seem natural. The room went deathly quiet except for Linda's quiet sobs. Mark stood by the window, staring out at the garden where we had once taken so many family photos. When he turned back, his face was set like stone. "You're done, Sarah," he said, his voice cold and final. "No more jobs at the company. No more access to family funds. No more Sunday dinners. No more anything." Sarah's defiance cracked, but no one moved to comfort her. 3 months later, we heard Sarah had moved across the country. Rumor had it she was living in a small apartment, working an entry-level job. Her gambling debts and legal fees had devoured every penny she had left. Occasionally, she sent emails, pleas for forgiveness, promises she had changed, or veiled threats about what she deserved. They sat unopened in our spam folder, alongside the demands from her creditors. The family business thrived once we implemented stricter financial controls. Tom and Linda transferred their shares directly to Mark, with a trust set up for our daughter. Linda replaced the old tea set with a new one that sparkled in the china cabinet, this time with perfectly matching cups. No chips, no flaws, no hidden intentions. Our daughter's nursery is painted in soft yellow, a room filled with warmth and love. But the real warmth comes from the photos on the walls, smaller now, with one less person in them. Yet somehow, they feel more complete. The smiles in those pictures finally reach everyone's eyes. They say money is the root of all evil. But I disagree. It's not wealth. It's the desperate need to possess what others have. Not just their money, but their happiness, their love, their very lives. Some people can't bear to see others succeed where they failed. I still check my daughter's bottles twice, test her food before feeding her. Some habits are hard to break. But as I watch her grow in a home filled with trust and love instead of greed and envy, I know we made the right choice. Some things are more precious than silver teacups and family fortunes. And some family portraits look better with one less false smile.